Greetings, everyone, and happy new moon. It's so good to be here. I'm very excited to be here. I know it's been a little time, but I thought it was the perfect time to re enter this space, re enter my wonderful community here at my Odd Speaks. I have really missed you all, and I'm not just saying that, I really have um, missed our conversations, our discussions, and just having this time with you. So I'm just happy to be here and I feel good. So, with that being said, before we get started with this conversation, not going to keep you too long today. I just want to just go over a few things before I introduce my lovely sister here. All right, so remember here at My Odd Speaks, this is a place, a community that is aimed to demonstrate how to maintain, uphold, and build a code and culture through the principles of Ma'at. And we use those principles by first beginning to apply those principles to ourselves. Then we extend those principles to our families and ultimately our communities. We seek to build with one another so that we have a bigger community, right? So we have a community within a community. So as you enter, make sure you hit that like button, share this wonderful conversation that we're going to be having today, and make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed. I want to shout out all my new subscribers here at My Odd Speaks. I really appreciate you. I don't treat it lightly for people who come and subscribe to the channel with as much that goes on in these spaces. I'm just thankful for everyone who chooses to watch the content, to subscribe, like, share, all of those good things. So, with that being said, you know that you can support the channel as well in multiple ways. So, I have my Cash App, which is My Odd Speaks, Venmo is My Odd Speaks,
and my PayPal, which is Gen Health Revolution. Also, you can go over and donate to buymeacoffee.com, because I love to enjoy my tea. So you can buy me a tea, or a few cups of tea. What Health Revolution website as try this. Okay. My Wi-Fi is acting a little weird. Nev, can you hear me? Can you see me? I have no. If you can hear or see me, please let me know in the chat. My Wi-Fi is just acting really weird right now, but it's okay because we are not totally out of this retrograde. So. Um, okay. Let's see. It's back. Okay, cool. Okay. All right. So let's continue with also my Generational Health Revolution site. You could go over on there. I'm excited because I'm adding some nice things in the near future to my Generational Health Revolution. Also, come over and follow me on Instagram at Generational Health Revolution. Yeah, just come over there. I'm not going to keep talking here. I want to go ahead and get us started. And so today we are going to be having a conversation. It's the new moon, and I'm going to let my sister kind of speak on what that really means. But I just want to remind you as you enter, just before we get deep into conversation, I want to remind you that prepare to open your minds so that we can consciously heal ourselves. That Ma'at Speaks is a place where we want to also facilitate where we are naming ourselves in a way that is native to who we are. So I started this channel so that we could heal ourselves, our community, and build with one another so that we can create a world that our children and future generations do not need to heal from. So, with that being said, I'm going to invite my lovely sister here, my sister Neff, and we're going to start this conversation. Welcome back, sis.
Blessings, Hetep and Ma'at. That means I'm offering you. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me again.
Yes, yes. So, we were talking behind another conversation we were having behind the scenes. And so we were talking about actually the Mercury retrograde, which ends today. And I'm a Virgo, y'all. So my birthday was not too long ago. If you follow me on Instagram, you may already know that. But I'm ruled by Mercury. So the retrograde has really, what is it? Has really been doing
Impacting you.
impacting me. Yes, I was trying to think of, I was not trying to say a negative word, but impacting me. But I also times because we're going to be talking about natural cycles and understanding, trusting, valuing those cycles. But I really appreciate it in a way, even though it can feel painful at times. I really appreciate it because it allows me to see what I need to work on, the things I need to work on, what I need to stop resisting, what I need to get better at, and then also what I need to release. So with that, we were talking and we were kind of discussing um kind of like this, this fake reality. I had another conversation with a friend of mine, and just the fake, we are in this fake system, fake reality. So a lot of times we not forget, we have to remember. I think we actually have to remember to trust our own natural cycles, and be able to get in tune with, the with one, with nature, right? But also trusting that we have all of the information within us. We have to trust and bring forth that information. So I asked my sister Neff to come on here, not only because she has the platform Navigating Eternity, us getting back to our real time, which I would like for her to kind of explain that. But let's, I guess, start with this retrograde, right? And how it has impacted, because now that we're coming out of it, and I'm going to tell you, I was just so excited when I got up this morning because I'm like, okay, we're getting to the end of it, because it has really been impacting me. So let's kind of talk about that and talk about us now. We're in this new moon, which, and just kind of discuss that with us.
Yeah. Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me again. I want to thank everybody who's tuning in. If you're here watching the raw play, or if you're here with us live, thank you for just contributing your energy and being present. I also want to prepare people for what this exchange has to offer, because I am a sacred wisdom keeper of ancient Kemetic sacred science. And my goal is to transmit and remind us of our legacy. So I'm going to be sharing some connections to ancient Kemet as far as our use of language, because we're usually using the Greek zodiac. So I just want to say that so that people can be prepared, because you can take notes. But also, maybe at the end, sis, you can put up tehutimaat.org so people can know where to get more information and how to stay connected with us, maybe even follow us on Instagram, because we're actually working on our Kemetic Zodiac course, which will be an extension of the Navigating Eternity course. So for those who don't know me, I am Senetem Aust Neferka Heteru. I am, as I said, a sacred wisdom keeper. I'm a spiritual warrior, a revolutionary. But one of my primary roles is I am a farmer. So I am here on the west coast of Africa, on the land of my foremothers and forefathers, stewarding and cultivating the land here. And that is my primary connection to nature. And I think that that's very significant, because our legacy as the first farmers and gardeners of the planet is exactly what provides us with the wisdom to connect with the natural cycles and systems, just as our most ancient ancestors, the first ones, I'm talking about way before Kemet ever existed, right? Because that culmination and that climax of wisdom and that golden age was a buildup of many cycles. So the best way for us to begin is to really recognize that we've been lied to, and obviously we've been indoctrinated. As Sister Ma'at said, we're in a construct that is created quite literally by our enemy within this dimension, and the crystallization of an energetic opposition that we know very well ancestrally, because we literally carved it into stone, and it still exists to this day on the temple walls. Now, because most of us are not aware of that because of the Ma'afa, and we find ourselves in this state of chaos right now because we're in a degenerate cycle of humanity. So just as I just described, we were at a climax point in Kemet. We declined into this degenerate cycle, and right now we're really going into complete collapse and chaos, and we're going to have to come back into order, which is cosmic order as we know it as Ma'at. So this is the natural cycle of how everything happens in nature, right? Neter, the divine, is a beautiful, intricate tapestry of multiple dimensions and multiverses, right? Many universes, and all converging and connecting. And it can be very difficult for a lot of us to trust in just the cycles, because not only the way we've been programmed, but also the degree of surrender that is necessary to not know the full story, right? Not be able to see how everything is interconnected. So that's why trust is something that we do have to cultivate within, right? And it begins within, because everything that's outside of us is a reflection of what's happening inside. And we were born into this world. We chose to come through during this particular cycle. So that is what we're experiencing as a collective, right? In the essence of us all being one, we're part of one ecosystem. So everything is interconnected. And that's something that we also have to remember. Now, when I say that we've been lied to, I think one of the key lies that I always need to demystify is the lie of evolution. Because many of us, and I really want to encourage people to exercise replacing the word evolution with revolution. And this is very important for us, specifically for those of us of African ascent, because we must declare revolution. The more we declare revolution, the stronger and the more movement we have energetically, vibrationally towards revolution and transformation of the situation that we find ourselves in as a collective African spirit. Now, evolution is linear. So they're teaching us that nature develops in a linear context, right? And it's progressive and it just gets better and better. And that's why people feel like they're going crazy when they are in a depressive state or things are not going great, because they don't recognize that in cycles, and when we look at the spiral of eternity, everything goes up and down and comes back around, just like the cycles in nature and the plants and the trees. They go dormant and they come back. And that is the ebb and flow of what is actually happening in the natural world. Now, within the capitalist construct, obviously, we're not programmed in that way. We're programmed to be machines, to be constantly going, and it's exhaustive. Most of us can't even consciously breathe, right? So it's a state of disempowerment. So when we come back to nature, we innately slow down. And the question that I was asked is about the retrograde. So first, where we're going to begin is any energetic sphere in our solar system, right? It's in a particular order. We have multiple energetic spheres that we call planets. And from where we are on Geb, on Earth, right? The ancient word for the Earth is Geb, which is a masculine principle, which is also significant. It's inverted in the European way that we've been indoctrinated to think of Mother Nature. And then they tell us there's a father God in the sky. But we saw that Nut, the heavens, which is the complement to Geb, the earth, is a feminine. And that the earth is actually in the womb of the cosmos, right? Because we know that even our brothers all come from the womb, right? So recognizing that all of these little details matter. And the reason why they matter even more in this moment is because the energy, as our sister said, is in Virgo. So the planet of Mercury, which is Tehuti, right? This is very important for us to recognize. We're using Greek and Roman words. We're literally using words of the enemies of our ancestors, right? Who created these ideas, right? So we're going back to the origins and we're going back to our ancestral vibrations because, one, just out of basic respect for our ancestors, we need to do that. So it's also freeing because the concepts, as we've been introduced to them through modern day astrology, are linear as well, and they're not holistic. So they're not seen as interconnected in all of the other cycles, right? It's not seen as connected to astronomy. It's not seen as connected to mathematics and all of the other sciences. Whereas ancestrally, it was all connected. And again, the only reason we were able to even study nature to the degree and be able to create all of these foundational science, even down to the architecture, is because of our wisdom in connection to Geb, to the earth, to the land, right? And the land, cultivating the land and being able to grow food in one place, farming, agriculture allowed us to create surplus and stay in one place and observe for millennia, cycle after cycle after cycle. And that's how we were able to observe and document the star systems and the movements, right? We created the first calendars. We had multiple calendars in Kemet. And all of this is significant because the calendars and our orientation to time was always based on movement. So I always tell people one of the key elements in the medicine of navigating eternity is it's not a matter of time, it's a matter of movement, right? So ancestrally, the way we were calculating time, even if you look back to a sundial, we're looking at our movement. Capitalism has trained us to look at it as value. Our time is money, people say, right? So all of these ideas have been inculcated into our culture that now we have to exercise. We have to literally wash these stains from our minds so that we can align with our true essence and our true power, which is in seeing our existence in an empowered state, not a disempowered state. So that's why connecting with nature is so important. Now, as Sister Ma'a says, she's a Virgo. Virgo is the energy of Aust, right? And that's also my namesake. So the energy of Aust is ruled by the planet Mercury, Tehuti. So when we see this retrograde right now, where Mercury is in Virgo, right? Tehuti is in Aust, right? This is why in the mythology of the story of Aust, Tehuti is one of the key players in supporting Aust and making sure Aust is given the words of power to resurrect Asar's body. All right. So I know some of the things that I'm saying may be, I'm just trusting your audience is probably more advanced. It is Ma'at Speaks, so I'm sure they're familiar with some of the storyline and the mythology. But all of our mythology was literally just based on the stars. It was literally us telling the story of what was the movements that were happening in the stars. And that's why myth is so powerful, because myth is always happening. It's cyclical. It's not a story that only happens once. We know there will always be Heru. There will always be As. There will always be a potential to embody these energies, because the energies will always be present and the movement and the story will always play out in the cosmos. So Ast is an energy that's specifically focused on the minutia and details, right? That's why sometimes it gets a negative connotation of being a perfectionist. And it's really just that affinity for details, right? And the complement, because again, in holistic thinking and looking at it from an ancient African perspective, it's holistic. So we always have to look at the complementary energy on the axis. So when we're looking at that zodiac wheel, there's 12 signs, and that means there are 6 axes. So you can never look at one sign without looking at its complement. The other side of the scale of Ast or Virgo is Pisces, Hatmi Hit. And that energy is focused on the big picture, right? It's the spiritual, it's the how everything's connected. It's literally being lost in oneness, right? Like losing self and just being part of the collective and the whole, right? So these energies are complementary because on this axis, it's focused on service, how we connect to others, how we serve, right? How we heal. And you have this very zoomed in perspective and you have this very zoomed out perspective. And that's why it must be in Ma'at, because you don't want to be too zoomed in and forget about the big picture, but you also don't want to be too zoomed out and miss the details. So when we say Mercury is in retrograde, that means that Tehuti, the energy of intelligence, communication, connection, this is why Sister referenced the internet going off. Usually anything dealing with communication, with intellect, with expression, writing, all of that can be impacted by a retrograde period. But it's important to recognize that a retrograde is an optical illusion. It's not actually a movement backwards. None of the planets ever move backward. They're always going forward. That's wisdom in itself, right? It just appears to move backward at certain points from where we are on our planet. So it's an optical illusion for us to see it moving backwards, and then it goes back forward and it covers the same territory that it appeared to move backwards in. So it's literally the grace of Neter for us to backtrack areas where we've already moved through, backtrack energetically, same themes start coming up. We start seeing certain things, having certain experiences, and it's meant for us to be in a reflective state. Now, this is why Mercury retrograde gets a bad rep, or any retrograde, because it depends on the energy sphere. So it could be a different planet, like Ptah, Jupiter is also retrograde. Many planets are retrograde right now. But depending on the planet, depends on what area of your life is being pulled back in that way, right? So with Mercury retrograde, it gets a bad rep because obviously it's a personal planet. It's the closest planet to our sun. We all feel it to some extent because it impacts the collective. But depending on your energy and your own star print, right, which is your blueprint when you were born, where were the stars when you were born, your natal chart, impacts you and how it's going to affect you. So when Sister Ma'at is saying like it's affecting her, she's a Virgo, she's a Aust energy. So that means that this energy being in Aust is going to doubly affect her because Mercury, Tehuti, also rules Aust. It is literally the planet that governs that energy. So it's all of those things determine if it impact you or not and how, because ultimately some people may not sense it because of their natal chart, right? And their energy disposition, it may not affect them as much. For me, I'm a Tehuti, so I'm a Gemini. So Gemini is also ruled by Mercury. So we both share, Ast and Tehuti share this energy sphere. And it's really significant because I've really learned to honor this energy. And I think the best way that people can begin to honor it, because we have Mercury goes retrograde, Tehuti goes retrograde about 4 times a year. And it's a time where you want to slow down. If you do not slow down, if you do not deeply go into reflective mode, then usually you're going to trip because things are going to change unexpectedly. You know, maybe travel arrangements, delays, whatever it may be. It's not recommended to sign contracts and do certain things during this energy. And when you just align with the energy and you trust that, instead of trying to force your will through the ego, set, our gravity, our lower self always wants to, you know, impose itself. But if you actually can pull the reins back on that and just surrender and trust and be more in that feminine state during those periods, then you'll find that you're going to be more at ease. It's kind of like floating on a current, and the current is just going to take you where you need to go. So as of tomorrow, officially, Mercury stations direct. So it's kind of like the slingshot gets pulled back and it's let go, and we get to go forward energetically. And hopefully, if you are reflecting and paying attention to what's going on in your life, you learn certain lessons. So when you move forward, you have more wisdom and you're moving forward on a stronger foot. So that's essentially what the energy is for, if we choose to align with it in that way.
Yes, and thank you for that, because I do appreciate you kind of breaking down connecting everything so that everyone can understand, because we do it's one of those things where we're kind of navigating, you know, the English language, right? And it's hard, like the elder said, it's hard to tell the truth in English. So, and honestly, it's really impossible. So like being able to, but we do navigate the English language, but understanding those connections. And I've spoken about this before on the channel, really being able to break away from that, as much as possible, right? So speaking, in a way that is, again, trying to be natural to who we are. So what I wanted to get into, right, just kind of after you um, discuss that, is trusting, right, and valuing our own natural cycles. So what happens, because we have these energies, and you talked about resting, right, or you talking about slowing down. So that's something that I had to learn actually during this, retrograde. And not that I don't value rest, But a lot of times when you're in a certain type of environment, and especially where I live, there's a very huge emphasis on quote unquote chasing the bag, right? And so you're trying to find your place in a society where that is not necessarily your goal, right? Like your goal is not to operate in that energy, but that energy is all around you. So understanding how to kind of navigate in that, having to depart from that at times, because you want to, because my goal is to not live in this society, right? My goal is to most likely live in another country where I am, like you farming your own land, things like that, right? So, but what happens is that because you're in this capitalistic society, you end up rushing and doing a lot more than you are meant to do. So what we have to figure out, and what I've had to figure out, is where to prioritize rest, right? And then sometimes you're forced to, right? And I talk about that also with your body, knowing what foods to absorb, because if you don't prioritize health, right, then sometimes you end up being forced to prioritize health in the long run because you didn't take the right precautions. My husband always say, stay ready so you don't have to get ready, right? So understanding those natural cycles. One, value. So me and you, we talked about value yesterday, and that's a huge thing in our community, because we have been told what to value and what value looks like. And a lot of times we are always seeking to be validated and to show that we are valuable. So even our natural born skills that we already have, that we are supposed to be using to restore ma'at, right? Like that's essentially what we're supposed to be using our gifts for. But what happens is that we are seeking to be validated by a foreign entity, so it's always, this paradigm that we live in. Uh-oh. Okay. This par Okay. I was just trying to make sure it wasn't me. That we live in, that where we're always seeking to be accepted by something outside of ourselves, right? And so the first thing that we have to, I believe that is paramount, right? Is that, do you value yourself, right? A lot of people talk about self-love, loving yourself, but do you already value what you already have? Do you believe that everything that you need is already within? That's a very hard concept to understand if you have lived in this society all your life, and your parents, your grandparents have lived here. So we always seek to look for validation outside ourselves. We always seek for power, for truth, all of those things, for peace. We always seek for those things to be outside of ourselves. So learning how to truly understand that value is not in is really shouldn't be predicated off of what you do for another person, right? It's kind of like with your children, and I think children learn this at a very young age, and it's a constant battle with your children, especially because a lot of times we're trying to get our children, in essence, to be submissive, right? We're trying to get them to, we want to be able to control them. And there's efforts for them to what? Behave, right? So like if you take them out, you want them to act a certain way. And so at a very young age, I believe children start believing that they have to do certain things in order to seek your attention, in order to seek value, to seek love, right? So when we are using, going back to what Sister Neff said, uh, when she was speaking, getting back to a place where we understand those value systems within ourselves, and not constantly trying to um, look for value from anywhere else other than ourselves, right? Because as you value yourself, you value what you already have, you value your natural, and we'll talk about what those cycles look like in a moment. But valuing those natural cycles within yourself, valuing those energies, because we are all affected in different ways. If we can start there, right? With what that is. For example, there's a lot of conversations that happen around Black men or Black women in what they deserve, right? So something happens to a Black man or a Black woman, an African man or an African woman in this society. What happens? You have multiple content being initiated by people saying why they deserved that treatment. And so it's that whole idea of, I'm going to show why this person deserved, let's just say, let's just say hit, right? Why this person deserved to be hit. But then it gets even more dangerous, right? When someone gets killed, then we are acting just like the Europeans when it says, let me wait for the information to come out. Let me
Yeah.
see what
That's one of ooh, it pisses me off. Like
right. Let me get all the information, right? Because I need to justify why this person deserved to be shot, right? When there's really no justification, or it's no parallel, right? There are some things that deserve, that deserve certain types of punishment, right? But when you tell me that this person deserved to be shot because, hey, they were a thief, or things like that. And so what we do is we use those same types of justifications that they use, and we then apply them to our own selves. And then we do it on a very small level. So it's a microcosm, right? So it becomes a bigger issue with even in our personal lives. So we might see that, and we talked about this yesterday. So we see that on television. We see certain things that are portrayed on television that justify, and we look at it as extreme, but then those extremes, and I spoke about this before, those extremes become our reality. So they're no longer extreme anymore. So until maybe it starts hitting closer to home, into your own community, into your own family. But then what happens is those people around you, or the other people that are outside of you, they no longer see those things as extreme either. So
it became
then
normalized.
right. We start internalizing those things, and then we start not valuing our own selves, right? So then when something happens to our own self, right? Where one of the things that we kind of gloss over when it comes to Ma'at is justice. We talk about the balance, we talk about the order, we talk about the truth, we talk about harmony, but we sometimes don't really hone in on justice, and that in order to restore Ma'at, justice has to be achieved. And so then when something happens to our own selves unjustly, what do? We say, well, I deserve this, even if it's on a subconscious level. It doesn't even have to be really conscious, but even on a subconscious level, we start rationalizing why we may have deserved this, because now it has now come from the outside in, right? Because that's what happens. Instead of the outside, instead of us influencing from the inside out, we let the outside in come in, and then we have that issue within our own value system, where now we have to trust everything else, validate everything else except for our own. And what does that happen? Who does that now affect? It now affects the next generation, because now not only do you no longer value yourself or your own um, power, you now are preaching that to the next generation as well, whether you're preaching it with your words, whether you're preaching it with your actions, whether you're whatever it is, it could be in multiple ways that you're showing them that they are not powerful or that they don't have value, right? And that's a hard thing for people to accept, because a lot of times people say, of course I value myself, or of course I value my children, of course I value the people around me. But we really have to get down to what that actually looks like, what that actually means. If we continue to live in a way where we are um, succumbing to their ways, right? And we have to understand that, we have to understand what that looks like. I don't think we know what that looks like. I told someone the other day, I was like, honestly, a lot of us, and I've said it, so, like, this is nothing new for me to say, but a lot of us, it's a very, what is it called? An insanity that is happening within us, because now we are like, we're white people in black face, right? Which is ironic, really, when
Mhm.
you think
Yeah.
about historically, But I'm gonna let you jump in, because I want you to touch on value and how that is tied to the energies that we are experiencing right now.
Yeah, and I just want to water your wisdom there because there's so much that you said that's very, very important. Um, First of all, when it does come to my aunt and what you said about the justice element, a lot of people don't like to leave out also sobriety, right?
Yeah,
That's also an aspect of my
right.
aunt. And the reason why this is important is because my aunt is a moral and ethical code.
Mm-hmm.
And that means it is a value system. It was depicting values that were necessary to be declared and for people to do a moral inventory on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we need that. We absolutely need that. And ancestrally, we needed that. That's why we created it, right? In the
Right.
way that this, right? Because Ma'at is a cosmic principle, but we're talking about bringing it down to earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Together. So how do we actually experience it is we have to see how we crystallize it in the material world. And like you said, what does that look like? What does valuing yourself look like?
Mm-hmm.
And because we've adopted, so you mentioned navigating eternity. I think it's very important for people to know navigating eternity is a medicine to heal that psychosis. It's a psychological, it's a psycho-spiritual medicine. It's literally to take us out of, because if our time paradigm, the way we perceive our existence, is indoctrinated into a Eurocentric way of thinking that is linear, then innately the deepest part of our thinking that is subconscious is European. So we're operating with a mindset that we have to heal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's medicine to take us out of the Greco-Roman time paradigm and into the cosmic clock that we have always had ancestrally, right? Because we're cosmic beings. That's actually our legacy.
Right.
Beyond the planet, the planet and beyond, right? That's what we're saying. So we have a lot of healing to do on that note. And it's very deep because it is subconscious, a lot of these things. So everyone doesn't come to it right away. And we also have to allow everyone to be where they are in their journey. If that's something that you're becoming conscious of, that you're open to, you're ready for that work, then you do that work, right? Because I find that sometimes we want to beat other people over the head with the, instead of embodying it and just shining and being it. And you don't even have to tell people to you. It's more effective to just embody the energy and be true to it, like really be the truth. And other people will come around you and they can't even lie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, the lie
Yeah.
cannot exist within that
Yeah.
frequency. So that's something that we really need to do. We're in an era of purification. It also connects to the energy of Aust, because Aust is the maiden, right? Virgo, right? And this energy is an energy of purification, right? That's why sometimes it's seen as the virgin, but that's the European
Right.
depiction of the, because it creates dichotomy between the prostitute and the virgin, right? So you have Nebetet, which they've created Mary Magdalene as a prostitute, right? Because that was a depiction of the energy that's opposite of Ast, which is Nebetet. So Ast and Asar are principles of life and regeneration, and you have Nebetet and Set, right? Speaking of the European, the Yorugu, Nebetet and Set are principles of death and decay. So now we literally have the principles of death and decay governing our values, right? And this is so subtle, but I do want to also mention this. It's very interesting changing from identifying even prostitution as prostitution to sex work. Those align with the values of attempting to normalize a particular way or behavior, right? So there's so many ways in which that happens. So when we have people who are murdered and killed and people are trying to justify why, or just can't see the innate value of that life.
Right.
And I'm talking about regardless of the color or the race or the species even, because I'm saying we don't value life in this culture. The culture that is dominating the planet right now is death focused, right? So we don't value life, period. You kill something without even batting an eye if it's not human. You know, and some people are we killing each other pretty much, not batting an eye, making music about it. You get what I'm saying? So now the culture has literally become promoting death. The music, the movies, everything is promoting death. And it's happened subtly, and all of the different values of death, anything that's not life affirming is promoted, right? So those subtleties are programming our values and what we see as important. And it's very important for us to just recognize just existing is enough. You don't have to prove any of that. But the thing is, it comes back to the healing process and the purification process, because when we start to cleanse our bodies, when we start to cleanse our minds, Aust energy is also very conducive, very supportive of detoxification, cleansing, which is, of course, you have generational health revolutions, like a clear embodiment of you embodying that Aust energy, because it is about detoxification and cleansing and healing your body. So these are all aspects of Aust that are very important. So during this energy cycle, remember, Mercury goes direct tomorrow, but it's going to continue on its journey through Aust. It's a 360-degree journey across the zodiac. So within each one, you have a 30 degrees of energy to move through. So we're going to continue to progress through Aust. So it's a great time to do that purification, that cleansing, but also thinking about childhood trauma, right? Because what you said about the children is also significant, because the reason why our values are as such, where we don't value ourselves, so we can't value anything else. It has to start within. If you don't love yourself, you're going to love people in a way that's not really what love is, right? We call it that, we romanticize it, emphasis on the Roman, right? In romantic. And we don't necessarily actually get to the heart of it, right? So we've been going through a lot of energies that have been trying to strengthen our heart, showing us, and the way the energy manifests, it's not just, oh, the energy is there, and if you know it, you know it. It's like, it doesn't matter if you don't even know it. The energy is what it is. It's going to move things in your life. Things are going to happen. People are going to call you. Things are going to stop. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, you could be on your way to work and the train stops, right? Like, the energy is just going to impact you in whatever way that you need. It's specific and unique to you. And what in your life is what's speaking to you. Everything is energy.
Right.
So it's that part. It's like the energy is permeating. It's ever present. So it's important to also demystify it, because some people get real mystic with it, and it's like not in a practical way. And this is real. Like, this is real how we live our lives and the choices we make. It all is a reflection of the energy that we're moving through. The problem is that we don't value it, and we're also not conscious of it for the most part. So what happens, we return back to our ancient cosmic language, and we connect back to the stars and the consciousness of the cycles and the systems through the mythologies, which are prophecies, right? Because if you know it's going to come back around, then you can prophesize it, right? So we have all of that to encourage us to move through this difficult moment that we're in as a collective, and to have our collective resurrection. So it is going to be, it's not easy to go into those spaces and heal. You know, as a child, if you are sexually abused, for example, you know, it's going to be very difficult for you to go through that journey of seeing your value, right? Because of the shame and the guilt and all of the other things that are created within that, where you innately just feel like you're not valuable and you don't matter and you weren't protected and you weren't safe and you're not safe, and it's all these other energies around you. So there's certain energies we move through. Well, all the energies are connected, right? It's whole, it's the whole thing. We're just looking at the pieces of the puzzle. That's what Aust does, right? That's what Virgo energy does. It looks at the pieces. And then the other side of that energy wants to put it all together and make it one whole thing. So right. When we look at the zodiac wheel and we look at the stars and the planets, right? It's different planets, but it's one solar system. Mm-hmm. It's different, but it's one supercluster, right? It's multiple superclusters, but it's one universe. It's one universe, but it's multiple universes. So it's just like, you get what I'm saying? It's just this constant expansion of how the energy exists on a macrocosm and on a microcosm, because you could go inward too and look at your cells. Right. They come together and they form organs. They come together and they, you exactly. Get what I'm saying? So yeah. It's just a beautiful just organization mm-hmm. of nature. And that's also what Ma'at is, because it's order, right? Things don't just happen chaotically, right? We're trying to make order out of the chaos we're in. And these energies are supporting us in that. Everything in the universe is, everything that happens in our lives, period, is happening for us, not against us. And the moment we shift our perspective on that, we can see how, okay, this person's not attacking me. They're a reflection of me. They're showing me something I need to see about myself so I can change the way I'm doing. And that in both ways, right? It could be they're showing you something you actually have in you, or they could show you something you're tolerating. So you need to change that about yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's about accountability also, because the complement of Ma'at is Tehuti, and Tehuti keeps the record. He's the scribe. Tehuti is going to make you accountable, because everything you ever did is written, right? So everything you do, you have to account for. So accountability is something we also struggle with. So we need to embody Tehuti with Ma'at. They both must be balanced because they're complementary energies.
Yes, yes. And I think it was, go ahead.
There was just one other thing I wanted to mention about the death culture that I want to like really illustrate this. There's a tradition that exists in the Congo, and it's called Kasala. Mm-hmm. And Kasala, someone commits a crime, right? They kill someone, they do something that's isfit, it's not in Ma'at. Mm-hmm. And that person being locked up in a cage or put on death row and their head chopped off, right? Mm-hmm. That person is brought into the center of the village, and everybody is present and shows up, and they put this person in the center and they shower this person, this being in the who just killed someone, just robbed some, stole something, whatever it may be. And they remind the person of who they are, right? I mean, they remind them of the things that they've accomplished. They remind them of their legacy. Mm-hmm. Who was your father? Who was your mother? You know, what, like, who are you? Because clearly you fucking forgot.
Right.
So it's a very, you see how that African tradition is very different from a European construct that we're in, where literally over a third of our population is locked up in cages. Mm-hmm. You feel what I'm saying? It's a valuing life. Everyone's energy matters. That's why they could enslave us mm-hmm. for as long as they did, and would have continued to enslave us. That's why I really don't like that Juneteenth narrative. I really don't like the emancipation narrative. We had to fight. We had to sacrifice. Blood had to be shed in order for us to take our freedom physically out of chattel slavery. We still have work to do. We're still not free spiritually. So it's very important, the subtleties of the narratives. And you see the root is in the culture, or what Mama Marimba Ani would say, the asili, right? The
Right.
cultural seed is what we have to go to. The root of it, right? The first thing when you sow a seed, the first thing that comes out is a root.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to share that tradition with people, because it shows, it's a different thing. Like, we value this person. Yeah, they killed someone, but the first thing we're doing is not saying they deserved it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, and going back to, and that very true, because um we're desensitized to death, and I was gonna say something, but I'm not gonna say it. But we're desensitized to it. I was even looking at how there was an incident that happened a few months ago, and how much of our people were laughing. I mean, making jokes of this man losing his life. And so we're very much desensitized to death. But again, goes back to the value system. And I appreciate everybody coming in. I did want to read Ayapo's comment here. He said, it's
Mm-hmm.
mind blowing to me sometimes. The hardest battles I get into and the most pushback I get from our people is when I'm defending our people. He said,
Hmm.
recognizing and understanding that we behave in certain ways because of brainwashing and conditioning isn't excusing anything. It's just recognizing cause and effect. And so the word that I use all the time, I say it so much, and so a lot of people know, that I say is intention, because it's an intentional work. So a lot of us are not really wanting to do the work, right? We will, quote unquote, continue to slave for another community. I talk about, and Dr. Marvani talked about it as well, about how anything that they create, so the European creates, right, is in service. So it's in service to them, right? So a lot of times we think that we can exist, we defend, like our people defend capitalism like they created capitalism, right? And so it's the whole idea of like anything that exists, even if we're participating in it, right? It's still in service to them, because this society is in service to them. And so, like Mama Ani, she says, that we have to, the work is not only just an intentional, but just like you said, there was bloodshed, right? We're not ready. We're not ready for that war. We're not ready for the consequences that come from that. Like you said, like spiritually dead. And a lot of us will link being spiritually dead to the religious aspects of it, but we don't even really understand. And I think, and I say this all the time, that we don't understand because we don't understand science. We don't know science. We don't study it in depthly like we should. We don't understand our own science. Like that's one thing. Like even within ourselves, like how you spoke about how the things that make up organs, just like looking at a baby being born, right? The chaos that happens when a baby is being created in the womb, and we don't even understand that process. We don't even understand. We want to go to a doctor, right? And we want the doctor to tell us what's wrong with us. And when that should be our power. Our power should be within. We should be able to go to someone and say, this is what's going on with me. I know that I'm off, right? I know that I don't get, you know, because it's just like a simple thing, like maybe a headache, right? If you don't get headaches, you should know, right? Or, something's off with me. I can understand this is what's going on. This is getting into to the natural cycles within ourselves. So you should be able to understand your body so well that no one else can tell you about you. You know, no one else can tell you what is going on internally with you, right? I know that if I eat this, this does not work well with my body, right? So now I no longer eat this food. And you know, we so backwards. We'll continue to eat something even if, when we know that it's damaging to our systems. You know, and again, all of that comes back. It all comes back and is linked to our value systems. So we want to start learning. So that in itself is an intentional work, right? So valuing ourselves, loving ourselves, doing the work there is an intentional work. Separating ourselves from the system as much as possible. I love an song by John Nine where she says like being able to separate, right? And this is paraphrase. I'm paraphrasing her lyrics, but separating as much from it as I can. So no one is saying that you can, that you are going to be able to completely separate it. I know for me, you know, you live out of
Completely
this
separated,
society,
you know.
right? So, but I know for me, I can't completely separate from it day to day, right? Now, I don't work in an institution, right? I work, I kind of decide what I'm going to do when I'm going to do it kind of thing. But at the same time, I still operate in this society where I operate around people who are seeking to be not themselves, right? Who have not took the time to do the intentional work to remember themselves. You know, just like I said that at the beginning and you said it too. Like you have to actually take the time to remember, you know. And the thing is the conditioning has told you that somebody else has to tell you who you are. Somebody else had to tell you that you were a sinner, that you were born into sin, that you were evil at conception, right? Evil before you even knew how to speak, you know. And so like even within that, what does that do to the
And will
psyche?
spiritually take your child and baptize your child. That's a very significant ritual to do to a
Right.
child.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it does to their spirit. um I want to make sure you weren't complete because I had so many things to say
Right.
about everything you just said.
No, go ahead,
I'm,
go ahead.
I'm holding my time. The brother, the brother that just spoke Iapo. I hope I said
Uh-huh.
that correctly. I don't remember what it was. But yeah, I wanted to point something out, and I want to invite our brother to think about using the word brain stained instead of brainwashed,
Mm.
because with Aust energy, right? Virgo energy, Aust is all about the divinity in the details. You see how literally they even will say the devil is in the details? It's
Mm-hmm.
those things that are sowing the seeds that are choking out the life out of our life, our fruit bearing crops, right? It's like you have a garden, you're not weeding it. It's just overgrown and you can't get nothing out of it. You really can't get nothing out of it when you've allowed these other things to just choke out the intentions you put into your garden was to grow food, right? So, and a lot of that's because we don't want to do that weeding. We don't want to pull things out. We don't want to make sacrifices. And one, I want to say we are ungrateful as a collective right now, this generation, and the very ungrateful for the sacrifices that were made before, because we haven't made those sacrifices. And we're not even thinking about the next generations ahead. And it's not we here, but I'm just putting us in our collective and not
Right.
separating. Because when you were speaking about, like you mentioned, the baby being developed, right? And how the cells are splitting apart and all of that. We have to recognize that in nature, everything in our African consciousness, our original African cosmic center is both and, right? It's holistic. It's not either or.
Yeah.
That either or, like Brenda said, and I have your Rugu right here. My thing is on top of it though, because I needed to lift my iPad. But in your Ooh, I really love how Mama Marimba really illustrates European culture and thought, and
Mm-hmm.
the importance of us seeing how they dichotomize and split everything. And the reason why are our children, right? That Africans created, and this is just us using the English words that we've been given. But our people, the original people of the planet, populated the entire planet. So everyone comes from that original womb, right?
Right.
And that means that separation exists in nature. The ice exists in nature. We know there's cold, right? Um, but for us, it's about being in ma'at with that, right? And with them, it's like, and I say them in terms of the separation, right? Distinction is important, right? When the cells begin to distinguish themselves and then they take form and create and self-organize, they start to become more complex and they create systems that interact and connect with one another.
Mm-hmm.
So we make distinctions for a purpose. It's not just for the sake of chaos, right? But we also can't be afraid of the nature of Yorugu, because we can't be afraid of nature at all. This is our shit. So it's like the same way with capitalism and everything that's been created. Like, we're using the technology right now to speak Ma'at, right? We have to be willing to go out and get that bag, right? And see the value in what we're creating, because the collective is shifting. So people are going to be able to value health and spirituality and the things that we have to offer. But the collective was not there before. But I also feel a lot of us were not valuing that, are valuing ourselves. So the energy has been cycling. A lot of the other movements that we've been moving through have been all nurturing us to value ourselves, to see our worthiness. So we've all been going through this, to see and feel and sense our worthiness, because there's larger cycles that we've been moving through, right? I mentioned Jupiter at the top. Well, in Api, the sign of the bull, which is all about value and how we value ourselves, but materially. So I wanted to say that because separating is important, because I think our big issue with not trusting natural cycles and not connecting with natural cycles, or even what you were saying about going to the doctor, is we don't want to take the responsibility that comes along with being conscious of certain things. So it's like, if you're connected to your body and you sense and you feel that thing, then now you have to do something about it. You go to the doctor and the doctor just gives you a pill, and that's why people are willing to just take a pill, or willing to just go under the knife and get a BBL or implants and take out liposuction, all of these different things, take the pills, because I don't want to do the work to lose weight, or I don't want to do the work to sculpt my body in a particular way, which is even questionable to begin with, right? In terms of, why do we want our bodies to look this particular
That's
way?
a whole different conversation.
But I say that because it's really showing our disconnect from ourselves. And I think that that's really rooted in our fear of the responsibility that it takes. Just like collectively, it's also an expression of the fear we have of revolution, of making the sacrifices we actually have to make to change the situation. Because as Frederick Douglass says, power concedes nothing without demand. It never has, and it never will. So first we have to start by stop willingly giving away our power, right? Because when you go to the doctor's office, you're willingly giving away your power. You can go into the doctor's office in an empowered state, right? I'm not saying that we have to completely disconnect ourselves. What we're saying is ma'at. We have to be in balance. We have to not do it from a state of disempowerment. We have to do it from a place of empowerment and alignment with our values. Then, I'm only going this deep in, right? And that's very important. We have to identify and create for ourselves what our values are. And you said something about remembrance, because I had mentioned that earlier and you alluded back to that. I wanted to connect that to Aust, this Mercury in Aust. The sun is in Aust as well, up until the 23rd, when we have the equinox. So I want to talk about that, because Aust energy is also about remembering Asar's body and putting the pieces together, right? So this is why those distinctions and the pieces of the puzzle have to be brought together.
Yeah.
So that's why Aust energy supports us in anything that's scientific, anything that's detail oriented. It's a very intellectual energy. And yeah, sorry, someone's calling me, but I'll let you respond to that. I wanted to offer that.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, with what you were just saying with the um that current I'm sorry. I just my brain kind of like went somewhere else. But yeah, like with that is getting back and the going back to what you were saying, like with the remembrance and that particular energy, and that goes back to even the work, because you know I think that when it comes to the work, because I talk about this all the time, and you even mention like the different ways that we do not want to do the work that it entails, and we've kind of gotten numbed to a lot of things, for lack of a better word, but just like we choose, I guess, what we would call so-called pleasures, right, over the actual work. And so, I kind of look at, like someone like a child. So a child, well, because my children, they'll do this sometimes where they'll talk about being bored, right? And so for me, I will say, I will give them certain things to do because my children don't really watch a lot of TV. They have like probably two shows I allowed them to watch, that we allowed them to watch. So they don't really watch a lot of TV. So, I'll give them other ideas, because they are creatives, like they are very creative children. And so, certain things like that. But I think as an adult, right, because you are an adult, you start feeling those quote unquote times of boredom, right? You start filling them with things that kind of keep you from doing certain things, because you know how we know that in silence and in rest comes the wisdom, comes the ideas, comes the space to be creative. Sometimes you have to stop in rest or just go into silence. We don't rest, and then we don't rest enough. We don't sleep enough in order to get those downloads, right? That we need in order. How many times, and you can probably even speak to this, the times that you may have been resting or in sleep and got and those things, the solutions come, right? And there's like actually scientific studies out there about that, about how your subconscious mind goes to work when you're actually resting. But we're in a constant state of movement, and a constant state of always going, that we're not able to get those times. We're not able to get those downloads. We're not able to get that wisdom. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have full grown adults, in my opinion, and this is the thing, because a lot of people, a lot of you talked about childhood trauma. A lot of us are still children and grown people's bodies. And so what is happening is that we're acting like children, because if I tell my 11-year-old, I tell my 11-year-old who doesn't really want to do something right now, right? And my 11-year-old is very, very honest. She's like one of the most honest 11-year-olds that exists. And she'll be like, oh, I feel like I want to be lazy today, right? And so we do allow our children to actually rest when it is appropriate for them to rest, right? Without the condition of you have to rest in order so that you can do more work.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is sometimes that is a very kind of like a childlike way, because what happens is, because a lot of us are operating from still like a child's place, because we didn't resolve certain those childhood things, or we got stunted in a certain time. We feel those things with things that are toxic to our bodies, right? So I talked about it before on a nutrition video that I made, how um we think that food or certain we think food, alcohol, um just anything. It's a lot of things that can be deemed as toxic. Now you can make something that's good toxic too, right? Because there are people who will sleep in the bed all day long, right? Because they're trying to get away from something. But I just want to take it to the things that we do know that are actually toxic. So certain foods, alcohol, certain things like that, where you are trying to numb something or fill a space or fill a void. So I have to always be around people, or I have to always be absorbing certain foods. And so I talked about how a lot of those things are linked, because when you're in a certain emotional state, I say it all the time, you really shouldn't be ingesting certain things at either or of the spectrum. So you shouldn't be really, really happy or really, really sad when you are ingesting certain things, because your body remembers it. And then your body says, oh, this made me happy, right? So when I ingested this food or I was around all of these people, that is when I was happy. And I had, we go to gatherings like like reunions and stuff like that, or birthday parties, whatever it is. And our bodies remember that time, and we link it back to food, or we link it back to alcohol, trying to fill in that void. And so what happens is, instead of actually doing the intentional work, right? Or instead of saying, it's okay not to be doing something right now. It's okay to be quote unquote bored, right? It's okay to sit in silence. It's okay to sit in the darkness, like, and we could talk about darkness and how it's got such a bad rap, right? Like, it's okay to sit in those places and do absolutely nothing, which is it could be a struggle for me too, because I feel like doing nothing, not sitting here, like absolutely doing nothing, I should be doing something. There should always be some type of movement that is happening. But again, it goes back to that work that we're not doing. So we're not recognizing the traumas, first of all, right? Because we have also normalized what trauma actually is. Um, and then we are not linking that I have not developed in this certain area in my life, or I haven't developed this part of me. It's kind of like a muscle, right? Like developing certain muscles in your body. So there are certain muscles that are weaker than other muscles. And so we have to take the time to develop them. That is not an easy thing to do. It takes work, it takes effort, to develop those things. And so what happens is that we seek to like fill the void, right? So if I'm trying to develop let's say I'm trying to develop my core muscles, right? My abs. And I'm just like, oh, I'm tired of trying to do that. Let me just go under the knife, right? In order to do that. That's the same thing that we do in our spiritual work. That's the same thing that we do in our the work that we need to do with deprogramming. Those are the same kind of attitudes that we're when we were presented with certain things. I remember being in a chat and someone was like, I laugh about it every time. And I was on a panel and I was talking about how us as African people are programmed. And he said, I'm not programmed. And I said, well, congratulations. You have successfully been programmed. Because the thing about it is, it's just like understanding that that's kind of the first step. You need to understand that everybody has had some type of programming and conditioning that maybe you need to look at and evaluate and study in order to deprogram those things. Now, is all programming bad?
Yeah.
I think
Right.
even right, exactly, right, right. And so with that, understanding that goes back to what you said, those values. What are your own personal values? And then those values, how do they create that balance and that order within yourself? And then how can you take those values and help the people around you, your community? your family, right? Your family, your community. How does that, align with those around you? And that's the thing, because we can talk about intentional work all we want to. We can say it's an intentional work, it's work, it's work, it's work. But until that person really gets ready to do the intentional work, because I think those are just words. Like, people hear the words, but they really have not internalized what that actually means, what that actually feels like, what you actually have to go through in order to. I talk about like, even like working out, right? Like, people don't want to go past that breath work, right? Like, even with breath work, because breath work is something that people don't even really understand, to the depth of like what we talk about. And like, even with breath work is not always comfortable, you know and so, like, all of these things, like, they're linked, like you said, holistically. Like, these are all holistic. So one aspect of your life is going to carry on to the other aspect of your life, how you show up. I talk about it all the time, because people will say, why are these people showing up like this on social media? I said, that's because that's how they show up in their own personal lives. Like, it's not people can fake it, right? You can fake it for so
Yeah, there's a
long.
lot.
Yeah, but ultimately, certain things gonna creep up. They might, because people don't know how to deal with their own personal triggers. Because I can recognize my own personal triggers, right? Because that's a work that I do, or whatever. And I can say that this particular thing triggers me. I can also recognize my past triggers that no longer trigger me.
Mhm.
So understanding that and working through those processes, which is an everyday thing. It's not just it's not even just, see, I want to get to the, like, the seasonal changes, right? Because that's kind of like a double entendre, right? Because you have your own personal seasons, and then you have the seasons that bring their own different types of energy. Because, like, summer, right? Summer is a different type of energy than the fall and winter. And, just like, I think it was you. I think you just spoke about this, about like death, like looking at nature and how it dies, right? Or
Mhm.
appearance, appearance of it dying in the winter, right? But then you see it coming back to life, right, in the spring. Or how those roots, was that you saying that the roots get deeper,
Yeah.
like they get deeper, I think, get deeper in the fall and in the winter, right? So that's what rest is. Your roots, I, your roots should be getting deeper in those times. I told you about how I sometimes go through kind of like those winter blues, right, in the fall and winter. But then I recognized it, especially during this time. I recognize that it wasn't. I don't think it's really because of a certain type, or just because I can't handle the fall and winter. I think I was just misusing the energies at
Mhm.
that time. So a lot of
Yeah.
times you're still trying to operate in the summer. You're trying to operate in the fall and the winter like you're operating in the summer, right? And
The
so we have to
hibernate.
learn how. Right, to actually stop and to rest, and to actually look at going into that hibernation mode. I did a meditation video of that, like with the beaver, because I think at the time it was like the beaver full moon, and what a beaver actually does as it's preparing for winter. And so,
Mhm.
just like other, parts of nature and animals, they actually prepare. It's just like the retrogrades. You said there's several retrogrades, right? And there's several Mercury retrogrades in a year. So, like, this is not, it's got another one is going to come. And so, actually preparing for that, because there's certain things I'll learn I will not do in a Mercury retrograde next time that I did in this retrograde, which actually stressed me. It caused more confusion in my personal life, because I didn't prepare probably as much as I should have prepared. So I think that that's the next thing, understanding, and healing through, because we're all, there was someone who said to me, they said, as long as you're on this plane, right? As long as we're on this plane of existence, we are healing from something. you know um it's like with African people, when it has there been a time that we've been on this soil that we weren't healing from something, or and at the same time simultaneously being attacked. So you're being attacked and trying to heal at the same time, and that's a very difficult thing to do. It's like you break your arm and someone keeps like hitting your arm, right? Like, and you're trying to heal from that. And so it's just like constantly being in that state of where we're trying to heal. So with that, we have to understand how to use these energies to heal through every season. So maybe you might not be able to heal one part of your spiritual body in the fall or winter, but maybe you can be working towards something else, but also just being able to heal through each of these seasons. So now we're going into the fall, right? We're going into in a couple weeks, we'll be going into that new season of the fall. So let's talk about how to prepare for the new season. It's going to be cooler weather. Um, as we go into winter, less sun, depending on where you are in the world. And
Mhm.
especially people who are in the north who don't get as much sun. So let's talk about how do we continue to heal through every season, your
Mhm.
personal cycles in your season, but also the seasons that are coming.
Yeah, the key word is continue because we're in a continuum. That's the important thing to recognize, right? Get out of that either or separate mindset and into the unification, remembering mindset. And that leads us into looking at the energy as a progression, right? When we move through the zodiac wheel, the energies progress from one to the next, and each one represents something different. I'm not going to go too deep into
Mhm.
that. If people are interested in that, they could definitely tune into the Navigating Eternity live stream series, which we still have a couple more episodes left in, where we go over more depth of how like the actual energies in real time as we're moving through them. But also with Navigating Eternity, being able to actually learn how to orient back into nature. Because like what you said about you probably didn't prepare as much as you should have. And I want to talk about that because that's such an embodiment of us, Virgo energy, that should have. So I want to invite everyone as well, because we all have the tendency to feel like I should have, especially when we're in this energy signature, and replace the should have with the would have. Because it's still good to have that retrospect and see, like, okay, I would have, I could have done this, and I would have done this. But the should have is one that I always like to challenge because we always did what we should have done. And with Aust energy, you need a lot of grace, because Aust energy tends to be very self-critical. There can be guilt and shame around decisions and things that we did or didn't do, or just being a very overachiever with Aust energy, because like I said, it's very intelligent. It's very much sees the best way anything could possibly be. And if it's not exactly aligned with that, it feels like it's not perfect. But the true wisdom of Ast is that everything is perfect exactly as it is. And that's when you can really tap into the power of the energy, because you recognize the divinity in all the details, like I said. So in this case, I want everyone to give themselves grace. You got to give yourself grace, especially with that retrograde we just moved through. It was like you had to give yourself a lot of grace for the past like 3 storms we just moved through, right? Um, so as of tomorrow, the energy is going to shift, but we're still, like I said, the sun is still going to complete its journey through Ost energy. So, just it's a good practice to celebrate yourself and what you have done, and release some of that, you know, judgment around what didn't get done. And, don't be weighed down by that, because remember that the energy progresses. So when the sun, it's like passing a baton. Ra,
Mhm.
the sun, gonna pass the baton, or Ast is gonna pass the baton of Ra to Ma'at, Libra, because we're entering into Ma'at season. So as of the equinox, we literally have equal night and equal day. So it literally opens us up into the next side of the energy, which is now balancing out. So the days are then going to begin to shorten and the nights are going to begin to lengthen. And that's a very significant point of the cycle. I also want to invite consciousness on the word fall, because everything that we say, like Malcolm said, English, the language of liars. I like to use autumn instead, because I just don't want us to say fall and like be going down.
Mm-hmm.
So just subtle things like that. And again, with Aust energy, yes, it matters. The details matter. And if we respect that, we really come into more empowerment within our lives. Because I know there are a lot of people that used to always like, I don't know if it's still like this, because I removed myself for several years and then came back to like be of service, because I was doing my introspection work and really doing my deep healing work inside. But before that, I remember people used to just have like a certain response to like reaction to like using certain words like understanding or womb man. And it's like people would clown stuff like that. And I don't know, it was just interesting to
like
I don't
Grand Rising. Like people like they cannot stand Grand Rising.
yeah, a lot of it has to do with the caricature of like the hoteps and like kind of villain like creating a it just made people want to disassociate with certain things, which we have to think about like the strategies of the enemy, and like you really have to be in a space of power, because you're also not in a space of power whenever we want to disassociate from anything just because of what other people think about it or how it may seem. But I said that because I think people do have a blockage with changing some of the language. So I just wanted to bring some consciousness to that for people who are watching, because sometimes we don't embrace changing certain language and we keep saying shit and creating it in our lives. And you say shit, you're gonna get shit. So just be aware of the words. You know, it's a gift to even be able to be made conscious of it. But you don't have to beat yourself up if you still use the words or not. Like I said, you just want to give yourself grace. You still want to move towards it. Like Sister Ma'at said, we're trying to, like, we know the demolition is going down, right? Do you want to be on ground zero, or you want to be as far away from ground zero as possible when the shit comes down?
Yeah.
That's so you don't have to beat yourself up if you feel like, you know, there's certain things you can't do, or, you know, because sometimes that can also be unhealthy as well. You have to be where you are, right? But try to be better. Just whatever's realistic to you, not striving for this idea of perfection that doesn't honor the perfection and the divinity of what is. And that's why Ast ushers in Ma'at season, right? Ast leads you to Ma'at. Ast brings you to balancing things within your life. It leads you to, it's interesting because I'm doing the Kepra, which is a course on Tehuti Ma'at Academy. It's a 28-day healing transformation process. And today the theme is actually balance. And I just recorded a video just talking about how it's important for us to do an inventory on ourselves. So as we prepare for Ma'at season to come in, and we're opening up the autumn, and that's a 3-moon cycle period, right? And then we'll have the 3 moons within the winter, and we'll progress, right? So when we're moving into this next season, Ma'at gives us the opportunity to take inventory of how we're exchanging energy. So you want to be aware of how you're putting energy out and how you're receiving energy back. And it's your job to seruj Ma'at. You have to restore Ma'at within your life. But you will have to be honest with yourself, again, Ma'at, of where things are in the scale. Because sometimes we want to see things in a certain way. And like you said, like we're kind of a bit delusional about certain things because we don't want to see certain things because of the work that it's going to take. And it's just very important. You only hold yourself back, right? You only stall. Because the energy, like I said, with the planets, it always goes forward. There's only forward motion. So all you're doing is stalling and slowing down. Because remember what I said at the very beginning, it's not a matter of time, it's a matter of movement. So that thing will wait until you finally get it. And if you never get it in this lifetime, you're going to come back around in the next lifetime and until you get it, because there's only one way. It's forward, right? And that is another way to look at the nature of it, right? It's just to see that the only way you can go is forward. So just keep that in mind energetically. It's like, you know, if you need to slow down and take your time, you can do that, but also don't stall yourself. So again, it's about finding that balance and making sure, like in your relationships, with your projects, like, are you getting the same thing that you're putting in? Do you have any blockages around receiving? Because a lot of us have blockages with our feminine energy, and that's males included. And likewise with the masculine energy, even females have a imbalance with masculine energy as well. So it's important to just recognize where you are, because everybody's in a unique place. And remember that Ma'at is a moral inventory you do on yourself. No one can tell you you're not in Ma'at, right? Like there's an aspect of, like, if you're embodying Ma'at, like there's a certain, right? There's order in spirituality. So, you know, there's judgment for a reason. There's a judgment scene. So judgment has its place. But ultimately, you're the one who needs to be the judge of yourself, because you can only judge something when you have the whole story. Ma'at is about wholeness. So you have to have both sides of the scale to make a judgment. So if you could judge yesterday, because you're the one who went through it,
Yeah.
right? But you can't judge your life. You're still alive. You still got tomorrow,
Yeah.
potentially, whoever knows how long. So it's not until death that you can actually judge your life, right? So we judge things once they're complete. So a cycle when it's complete. So as we're completing the autumn with navigating eternity, our medicine is all about, you know, you also have to have that review, right? That raw view is you looking back to the previous cycle. So you want to look at the summer months and the 3 moons that we just moved through in the summer, right? And evaluate that and see where you want to go forward, right? Because there's a lot of lessons in that reflection, right? So even though Mercury is now stationing direct, that doesn't mean you don't do reflection. You still want to reflect on the past season and see what you can take from that to move into this next season. And that's how you want to be progressive with the energy.
Yes, and I like how you know, discuss the self inventory because, and I mean, even the judgmental part because you know I am because of that energy that I have, I do tend to always be evaluating myself and always constantly like trying to think of how to do things better, right? And that was one thing that even when I came to my solar return, my birthday, and really thinking about that and really honoring myself in like my current state where I am right now and not thinking about all of the things, and how far I've come. And a lot of times we tend to always think about where we're going, what we have, what we still need to accomplish, what we still need to do. And I like how you talk about um, the whole concept of running out of time or not having enough time, and that being movement, right? And so, even when it comes to that self analysis, and really having to be balanced within that, having to be balanced within actually, you talked about earlier accountability, holding that accountability to yourself, but even being able to, because there's a thing where you, I can't think of the term right now, but there is something where you analyze being able to analyze yourself in a way where you know what to consume and not to consume, but you have to have that from I think from that space of not being I can't think of the term right now, but not being taint like that, that what is the term? Kind of like that tainted, like you're tainted or whatever, like it's poison,
Mm,
where you're coming, like you're pouring from something that is not yet, um I don't like
purified.
even to use, yeah, yeah, purified, right? So what happens is that when you are trying to do the analysis of yourself, or even trying to understand how to, I'll do it from a nutrition perspective. So a lot of times, we try to stay away from certain things, and we have a hard time because we may not have detoxed yet. We may not have gotten to the rhythm of eating properly, those types of things. So if a person says to you, or let's say you're working with a nutritionist or something like that, and somebody says to you, like, I need you, um, to take all of the bad foods out of your house or whatever, and they say, well, I can eat, I don't, it's fine or whatever, but because you haven't actually gotten to the rhythm, you haven't detoxed your body, it's going to be very hard for you to have those types of food in your home and not reach for them because you have not gotten into that process yet. And so a lot of times, even the analysis of yourself, you have to make sure that your well is not poisoned, right? And that you are able to do the analysis of yourself. I spoke to you before about that mirror and how a lot of people are your mirror. And are you
Mhm.
able to look in that mirror, right? Is somebody able to tell you about yourself, hold you accountable? Because sometimes we do not know how we're coming off to the people around us. Um, there's
Mhm.
someone who, told me and my husband, like, your spouse is your mirror, right? So a lot of times you don't want to hear what your spouse is saying. You don't agree with it, but they're actually holding that mirror up to you and actually telling you how you are being perceived or how you're coming off, whether that is your intention or not. Because also intention matters. So if I perceive that my husband is being mean to me, it's not necessarily his intention, may not be his intention, right? So then you can be able to actually have the conversation and communicate about better approaches. But if that person is straight up trying to, like, their intention is not good, or being mean or trying to belittle you, that's a whole different, conversation. And so, like, even within that, I try to, and I am in a space where I am trying to let go of that, like, judgment, right? Where
Mhm.
I judge myself kind of in a harsh way. And even Ayapo, he said it here. He said, I actually know someone who is hard on their self, at least outwardly, and in my opinion, just uses this as a license to be extremely hard on others.
I used
And
to be that person.
I was like, that is something that I have been releasing because I would say that all the time. I'm hard on you because I'm so hard on myself, you know? And so,
I
and
am
that's,
conscious
and
of it.
right.
Yeah, it's interesting. But it
Yeah.
took my to that's the beautiful thing about having a divine complement in your life, because they're going to show you things that you won't see otherwise. And
Hmm.
I had a mirror for 9 years that really showed me a lot of things that I was able to heal and grow through and transform. But that was something that I definitely had to heal. And I think the key to that is recognize, because it's like you have really high standards that you're
Hmm.
aiming for, and because you're working so hard for that, you feel like everyone should, again coming back to that word should. So it comes back to healing that should, and allowing people seeing the divinity in every single person, including yourself. So you have to do that work first. But sometimes, like, that person might not be conscious of it, brother. So I also want to invite you to maybe, you know, tehuti ma'at, express the truth to this person. So maybe they might need you as a mirror to see that in a graceful, loving way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, like, what we, kind of, wrapping up here is being able to have those people in your life that can hold those mirrors up to you, you know. I think successful relationships happen when there are people who can kind of hold that mirror up and kind of show you, you
Yeah.
know, are you going to be able to accept that, right? And that's a big thing, I would say, that it is in our community, because you don't especially with the parent child dynamic, because your children are your mirrors too.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and being able to accept, you know, certain things, because, you know, there are times, and I tell people all the time, like, you know, a lot of people scream respect from children, say children are supposed to be respect. I said, but do you respect children? You know, are you
Yes.
respectful to
That
them? How do you communicate to them, you know? And so,
likewise with
mhm, right. And so, you know, with this new moon, we're going to wrap up here, but just give people who want to work with the energy of the new moon and Virgo, let's just give them some things that they can do right now today. I'm not sure. I think the exact time is somewhere this evening, at night. So if
our
you want to, you know, like use the energy of the new moon, what are some things that they can do right now today?
Yeah, I think the official time might be 9:53 if I'm not mistaken. That might not be the exact time, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is, Eastern time. So
Hmm.
if you are so either way this night, so that means the moon is still waning. It's waning into the new moon, and then we're going to be opening up a new cycle. So I want to wish everyone a happy new moon. And within this new moon cycle, and beyond, right? Because, like I said, we're moving into the equinox. So we're also initiating a new season. So, what my recommendation is, my invitation, emphasis on the in, my invitation is for you to go in yourself and declare. I want you to write out, express, right? Because we want to tap into this Ast energy, this Virgo energy, is mercurial. It's Tehuti energy, the writer, the scribe, the expression, but also use your words. There's so much potent birthing energy right now. Like whatever you say, that's why I want you to be careful, full of care with your words, and immaculate with your words, because what you're sowing right now is very fertile. So
Mm.
to go inside, journal, write out what are the seeds you're sowing, not only for this new moon cycle that we're beginning, but for this new season, right? We're all entering a new season in our lives. We've been going through so many transformations, so many shifts happening in our lives to get us on track to being in alignment with our full potential or our highest potential. And this is an opportunity for you to be clear on what seeds you want to sow. And then tonight, I want to encourage you to actually say them out loud. If you can say them in the mirror or just say them in whatever way, whatever sacred space you can create for yourself. But actually saying them out, I think, is a very powerful thing. So just be conscientious of your words, how you phrase it. If you are interested in joining Tehutma, we have a great workshop on elevating your affirmations into declarations, because there's a lot of consciousness you want to have around the words that you choose. You want to say what you want to see, not what you don't want to see. And sometimes we have the tendency of writing out in the negative. So that's the only other thing that I want to acknowledge. Yes, please follow us on YouTube. You can also follow us on Instagram. It's just Tehuti Ma'at if you would like to just stay in tune with the things that we have going on. And then we mentioned Navigating Eternity several times. Sister Ma'at is also enrolled in Navigating Eternity. It is our online course. And as of this next winter season, the price is going to go up. So this is actually your opportunity to actually get in the course now. But coming this winter in December, we're going to start doing recruitment and enrollment for our accountability community, the JED, which is the accountability community that goes along with the course to create that accountability and really lift us into accountability of actually implementing the medicine into our lives, checking in with others who are like-minded people who are here or Tehutima, right? Because it's a cosmic force, right? It's a principle. It's those of us who are here to bring down this new kingdom. I always like to emphasize that new is not NEW, but NU, because NU is the primordial force, the primordial waters, um, in which we all came from, right? So it's very important for us to recognize there's nothing new under the sun, right? But as Octavia Butler said, there are new suns. So our goal is to be birthing these new suns because we are a collective and a cooperative instrument that is for leaders, people who are here for the resurrection of the African world. And if you're looking for resources around your spiritual journey, your healing process, then I do highly encourage you to join Tehuti And yeah, if you want more information, she already put the link on there and you can get in contact with me via those spaces. And I want to thank you again, Sister Ma'at, for inviting me and allowing me to share this wisdom with your audience. And I just want to thank you also for your embodiment and your wisdom and just creating this platform for this work to be able to spread, to be able to share the message of Ma'at and introduce more people to Ma'at is just such a powerful thing. So I just want to thank you for your service.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I always enjoy our conversations. You are doing such great work. I am thankful for the work that you do, the work that you're doing in your community, the work that you're doing yourself. So I appreciate all of it. I appreciate you coming in. This was last minute. We decided to have this conversation, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here and really because I thought it was a really important time as we get ready for this new season, but also just like the new moon. So I just really appreciate it. I appreciate it. And y'all just like she said, go over to Tahuti Ma'ai. Also follow her on Instagram, and really let's get back to our time, to real time, and being able to navigate time properly, even in whatever paradigm, whatever society that you're in, that we can get back to that, because that is what Ma'at is about, bringing that balance in several different ways. And that is how we restore it. So, with that being said, I'm going to wrap up here. We're going to go on about our days. I hope you use the energy of this new moon today. Be intentional with the energy, be intentional with the work that you're doing on yourself, the work that you're doing in your families, and hopefully the work that you're also doing in your communities. And just remember, just like my dear sister said, like that revolution, the first revolution begins with yourself. So with that, that is it. I will see you next time. Peace, family.
Happy healing. Power.